electric cars soon, so why so few places to recharge them? The last chapter for shops like this high street bookseller, the rise in business rates driving firms like this out of business. Crowds turn out to debate the future of the valleys. How will the latest regeneration initiative succeed when so many attempts have failed?
What I want to know is what buses are running at 10 o'clock at night, because throughout the valleys they all finish at 6 o'clock.
Getting that community spirit back, it's not about money.
And you've probably never heard of him, but schoolboy Jackson Page from Ebbw Vale is taking on the pros and winning. Good evening. They voted for less money in the future to save their jobs. Thousands of Tata steelworkers here overwhelmingly backed a deal that'll end the company's final salary pension scheme. The three unions of the company's UK plans had recommended that their members, including 6,000 in Wales, accept the deal. Tata's offer included a £1 billion investment commitment at Port Talbot and no compulsory job losses. More from our business correspondent, Brian Meakin.
20-year-old Scott Bamsey has been working at Port Talbot for 10 years. He followed his dad into the Tata plant. Scott and his workmates have had a tough decision to make.
What does it mean for you in particular and the younger work?
Obviously pension is not so at the front of our minds as the older workforce, but obviously it gives us hope for the future. That's what we need. We need to save the steel industry for our futures and obviously the next generation coming through. So if Tata stick to their commitments, which we'll hold them to, and UK government finally step up and commit to the UK steel industry, then hopefully that will give us a future that we know we deserve.
Workers are being offered a pension that will give them a lot less in retirement than their current one. The company will pay 10% into the pension pot, with workers paying 6%. Tata says it's essential to secure the long-term future of Port Talbot and the other plants. The pension deal is also tied to a 10-year £1 billion investment plan to support steelmaking at the site. A minimum 5-year commitment to keeping 2 blast furnaces at the Port Talbot plant, and a commitment to seek to avoid compulsory redundancies during that time.
I think although the employees at Port Talbot and elsewhere have voted on it, it was inevitable. They didn't really have any choice in the matter. The traditional company pension scheme is dead in the private sector. Companies are closing the pension schemes left, right and centre. We had Tesco, which was a very big one about a year ago. Royal Mail are closing theirs. It is just the way of the world.
When the pensions deal was announced in December, the workforce seemed split and there was a significant chance that it would be rejected. But in the end, members of the community union voted 72% in favour on a turnout of 70%. Unite reported a 75% vote in favour on a 69% turnout, while GMB said its members voted yes by 74% in a 51% turnout. Local union leaders who also work at Port Talbot initially said they'd let members decide for themselves, but last month they urged them to back the deal, arguing the alternative was almost unthinkable.
I don't think anybody had any great pleasure in putting the X in the yes box. And I think people have reflected and thought about the future, and you know it is the ultimate sacrifice. Absolutely immense to do, and it is the lesser of two evils.
Do you think that Tata can rebuild trust, and how does it go about doing it?
Everybody, I think, now has got to a stage where we're tired, frustrated, tired, and we need to rebuild the confidence in ourselves, in the company, and put us back where we need to be.
There's still a lot more to happen, including what happens overall with the pension fund, isn't there?
Just because today's vote has come back with a yes doesn't mean to say that we stop. We're going to carry on. We're going to hold the company to account to do what they said they're going to do. We're going to hold the account to the government to actually step up to the plate, but also we're going to make sure what's best for our members.
The future of Port Talbot and the rest of Tata's UK operations, including Trostre in Llanelli and Shotton, may be a little clearer tonight, but there are many more decisions to be made about what that future looks like.
Brian, a year of uncertainty for Tata workers. Does today's vote draw a line under it all?
this certainly isn't the end, Jamie. Tata has said that it is pleased that workers have signed up to this plan for the long-term future, but there are going to be questions about Tata delivering on the promises and pledges it's made. And also another big decision that is coming along. Tata wants to take this pension scheme and its 130,000 members and separate it completely from the company. And it's going to have to get the support of regulators and the UK government in order to achieve that. There's also questions for the UK government about how steel fits into its industrial strategy that it's been talking about, and also how important steel is in its Brexit negotiations, because it did say it was fairly low down in comparison to some other sectors such as aerospace and car making. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on the UK government to make sure steel continues to have the place at the table that it has had in the last year.
Brian Meakin, thank you. Wales urgently needs a network of rapid charging points for electric cars. That's the call tonight from campaigners who claim a lack of infrastructure in rural Wales is holding back the growth of low-carbon vehicles. Currently, the only rapid charging points available to the public are along the M4 and the A55. Here's our environment correspondent, Stefan Messenger.
Making the switch from a diesel van to an electric model was all about cutting fuel costs and helping the environment for businessman Richard Burrows. Based in Newtown in Powys, he delivers plumbing and heating supplies.
Hi, Rich. Hi there. How are you? Nice to meet you. Thanks for letting us come over.
Yeah, no worries.
So this is your shiny new van?
Yeah, this is my electric van, yeah.
Brilliant. And we're going to go for a spin?
Yeah, jump in.
Thank you.
He's installed his own charger, which tops up the van in around 4 hours. But far from helping his business, he's found that a lack of points to plug into whilst he's out and about means this new vehicle is actually holding him back.
On a fully charged battery, you get about 70 miles.
I mean, people talk about this thing, range anxiety. That's really something that you feel.
It's terrible, actually. You're very, very conscious of how far you can actually go. Currently, to operate an electric vehicle in mid Wales is quite a tricky thing to do.
And this is why. Currently, so-called rapid charging points that can top up an electric car in around 20 to 30 minutes are only available at 4 locations along the A55 and 8 stops along the M4. Without some serious forward planning, the rest of Wales is, in Richard's words, a no-go zone.
We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to be green. We're trying to have a carbon neutral, standpoint. So, when you're trying to do the right thing and everything seems against you, it's quite a difficult thing. It's frustrating. Yeah, very, very frustrating.
Use of electric cars is growing in Wales. Latest figures show there are 1,725 licensed vehicles here, compared to just 70 back in 2012. The Welsh Government says it wants to see that continue. More of us choosing electric vehicles will help tackle carbon emissions and air pollution. But campaigners say a lack of charging infrastructure means the switch isn't happening as quickly as it could.
At the moment, you can't travel from North to South Wales on an electric vehicle. And the trouble is, it's a chicken and egg situation. People want to travel and use electric vehicles, but they can't because the infrastructure is not there, and the infrastructure is not going to be built until the demand is there. I think what I would like to see is government recognising that it does need some grant and funding support.
Back in 2015, a report by transport experts commissioned by the Welsh Government made a string of recommendations to improve the situation. They included installing charge points on all government property and encouraging local authorities to do the same.
All the places that people want to go need to have those recharging points. We don't have that at the moment. And so until we get to that level, I think we're still going to struggle a bit to really make a difference in terms of our carbon emissions from vehicles.
The Welsh Government told us it was considering the recommendations it had received and was committed to helping the low-carbon vehicle sector grow in Wales. Back in Newtown, Richard is hoping it won't be too long before he has other, faster points to plug into, apart from his own.
Stefan Messenger reporting. A 23-year-old man from South Wales will appear before Westminster magistrates tomorrow, charged with terrorism offences. Nathan Saunders from Tredegar was arrested earlier this month and is accused of possessing information likely to be useful to a person committing or preparing an act of terrorism. Severn Trent has completed its takeover of Wrexham's Dee Valley Water. Shareholders were against the deal because of fears over job losses and rising bills, but they dropped an appeal opposing it on Sunday. Businesses could close up and down our high streets because of a rise in business rates this April. That's the warning tonight. Millions of pounds of rates went unpaid in Wales last year, and property experts have warned things could get worse. Jordan Davis has the story.
An independent bookshop. Remember those? This one in Cowbridge in the Vale of Glamorgan has been selling to all ages for 30 years. But competition online and a rise in the tax Ross here pays on the shop, the business rates set by a UK government body, means it may not be a fairy tale future.
Almost certain closure. I don't think any businessman can effectively programme in a 270% rise in turnover. So once we get to years 2 and 3, as the scheme currently stands, it will be unaffordable to continue.
Business rates, a tax, go towards paying for public services. More than £900 million was collected in Wales last year. But £50 million went unpaid. A £20 million rise in 10 years.
But if there's already millions in business rates that are going uncollected, what effect will shops like this, who may struggle to afford the new rate rise, have on that overall pot?
Some property consultants believe it could cause it to rise.
Absolutely, there is the potential for that to grow.
And at a steeper rate than we've seen maybe in the last decade?
I think, yeah, the liability has increased. So if people were struggling before, then I think there's nothing to suggest that anything's going to become any easier for them. And yes, you could end up seeing a lot more vacant properties on the high street as a result.
In the Senedd today, the Finance Secretary, Mark Drakeford, said small businesses should know by the end of the week exactly how he plans to help them. Businesses on high streets like this will receive an extra £20 million, say the Welsh Government. Rates are generally going down in Welsh cities. The WLGA says it's working on targeting relief, but admits timescales have been challenging. With the rate rise now weeks away, some rural businesses say they need help now.
You're watching Wales Today from the BBC. Much more to come before 7 o'clock. Sweeping up the syringes, how Wrexham's trying to get clean by taking drugs paraphernalia off the streets. While his friends are in school, teenager Jackson Page from Ebbw Vale is sharing the stage with some of the world's best. The minister in charge of the new body, which aims to raise living standards in the South Wales Valley, says it's not just about delivering shiny new roads, but about creating an industrial renaissance after a century of economic decline. Alan Davis was speaking after chairing his first public meeting of the Valley's task force in Merthyr Tydfil. Our political editor, Nick Savini, went along.
A roll call of regeneration schemes for the valleys has been a feature of government in Wales for decades. Now a different time and a different approach. The latest ideas for regeneration are discussed at a public meeting in Merthyr Tydfil of the Welsh Government's Valleys Task Force. Alan Davis is keen to show his credentials as a Tredegar boy.
I voted today in the primary school, in fact in the classroom, where I started school when I was 4 years old.
Labour politicians don't usually have to do this, but the party's tribal support is not what it once was here. So what do people want? Well, as you can expect, there's no shortage of concerns.
What I want to know is what buses are running at 10 o'clock at night, because throughout the valleys they all finish at 6 o'clock.
The Welsh Pack is a fantastic idea in theory. When you put it into practice, it breaks down straight away.
Getting that community spirit back, it's not about money. Aberfan and Merthyr Vale have got £1 million available. Not one person turned up from that community.
Well, the overwhelming sense from a public meeting like this is the dizzying array of subjects that were discussed, from super local issues like fly tipping, to apprenticeships, to productivity, to the state of late-night bus services, and it will be a real job of the machinery of government to knock this into some kind of coherent response.
It's about, you know, the feet of the fire on the politicians to actually
implement what has been discussed, I think.
I mean, it's days of austerity. We want value for money, but we want to see action and we want results. And that's what communities need.
With a town like Merthyr Tydfil, we've already received a generous allowance of European money, and I think that now it's beholden upon the people who've received that sort of money, including the college and all the other things that we've talked about this evening, that they begin to generate funds themselves.
There'll be no new government department with the task force. Instead, it'll look to influence different ministers from the inside. But will it succeed where others have failed?
You're telling me other people have tried it before and they failed, therefore you will fail. Now that is the counsel of despair, and I'm not going to accept that. You're from the valleys, I'm from the valleys, you want this to succeed, I want this to succeed. And all of us who are from the valleys want to see the success here. And that means we need to work together to do that.
What I'm saying is, though, people in the valleys have seen the schemes come and go. What is going to be different about this one?
What this is bringing a razor-sharp focus across all the activities of government. No part of the work of the government is outside our scope.
Billions have been spent regenerating the valleys over many years. The landscape's very different now, particularly after Brexit, and the likelihood is that it'll have to be done in the future with far less money in the coffers.
Nick Savini reporting. Able and talented pupils are not getting enough attention in Welsh schools. That's according to the education watchdog Estyn, which says schools instead focus on helping pupils on the borderline between C and D grades. The Welsh Government agrees. It says it needs to push more able pupils to reach their full potential. What can be done to tackle the growing number of needles and syringes discarded by drug users? Well, that's the question being considered in Wrexham after a report into so-called drug litter recommended more cooperation between the council, the police and health service. A dedicated helpline for people to report the problem could also be set up. Matthew Richards reports.
These images of discarded needles, prescription medication and other drug paraphernalia were taken by a Wrexham councillor close to the town centre last year. Others have called for greater action to tackle the problems in their ward, which they say pose a risk to residents and give the town a bad name.
We sort of try to look after the most vulnerable, but I think the emphasis in my area has switched around now, where my residents are feeling the most vulnerable in the area, and too much emphasis in their regard, and probably my own regard, is given to these particular clients and things like that. Or not just the clients, as I say, there's a large group who aren't engaging with the agencies.
Zoe is a volunteer with the drug and alcohol charity CAIS. She struggled with addiction herself and is now working with others to try and make a positive contribution to society as part of a project to clear drug litter.
I injected, I smoked crack cocaine. If I had to go into an empty shed or a derelict building to take my drugs, I would, because I was desperate, you know. So nowadays I go into these places and I tidy them up, you know. I'm making amends for the way I used to live.
Wrexham councillors are discussing research which says there should be better cooperation between the local authority, police, charities and the health board, which supplies clean needles. And CAIS has been given extra money to fund litter picks every month like this. Staff say it's often just a minority of drug users who are leaving the litter.
The majority of users use responsibly. There is a small minority that don't, quite often from the homeless community, but not always. And it's difficult to control that with those people.
A pilot scheme for Wrexham councillors to report drug litter could be extended to the public, but towns and cities across Wales are affected, with no quick fix in sight.
Football and Cardiff City have moved into the top half of the Championship after a remarkable comeback away at Derby County. Trailing 2-0 after the first 20 minutes, Kadeem Harris started the comeback with 2 goals before Craig Noon's long-range strike. And a 90th minute penalty from Joe Rawls saw the Bluebirds winning by 4-3. Success in the snooker for several Welsh players today. Lee Walker and Dominic Dale through to the last 32 of the Welsh Open in Cardiff. But the star of the show was Jackson Page from Ebbw Vale. He's also through to the next round, outperforming some of the best players in the world at 15 years old. Paul Heaney has the story.
They say practice makes perfect.
even at just 15 years old, Jackson Page is well prepared.
Obviously my bump first started me into the game when I was 3, which was great. He got me on the table and I used to play there. And he always used to tell me to practice my colours.
From the Players' Lounge yesterday, he watched as two-time world champion Mark Williams crashed out in the first round. But Williams, he says, played an important part in his own success.
Mark took the club over in Chile when I was about, say, 10, and then 12, 13, 14 I've been given, and 15 now obviously, I've been given free play down there, and I've practiced with Mark quite a lot, so it's really a great help.
At his school in Ebbw Vale, he's living up to the mantra. They've specially arranged time off from class for him here, a pupil inspired to chase his dream job.
So obviously up here we have the board of local celebrities.
Mark Williams, one of those famous faces.
And as we use it as an inspiration, hopefully, for other pupils.
They're not surprised here Jackson's doing so well.
He's a very confident individual. He's very bright and articulate. And talented in lots of different ways, and I think maybe that gives him the confidence he has because he's so laid back. Every challenge he faces seems to be undaunted by it, and it's just something that he takes in his stride, and I've no doubt that he will go on to massive things.
Really good to see someone from our school doing so well in almost like really professional sport.
Can you believe what happened?
Another win this afternoon means world number 4 Judd Trump could meet him in the next round.
See, I looked at the draw and I saw Judd was at the top of the thing and I knew I could play him. So it was like that was my eyes were set on that as well. Because obviously, when I first started watching, it was in Newport at the time, and I watched Judd against Ronnie on the TV table. So my dad always said to me, "It will be you one day," and hopefully tomorrow it will be.
On appearances, at least, this was just another day in the office for Jackson Page.
Yeah, good luck to him, and you can find out who Jackson Page will play next after this programme from 7 o'clock tonight, live over on BBC Two Wales and on the BBC Red Button and online. For the first time, a production by the Welsh Language National Theatre Company has been broadcast live into cinemas. Last night's staging of Macbeth by Theatr Genedlaethol was performed in front of a small audience at Caerphilly Castle, but watched by crowds in cinemas across Wales. It's part of an effort to reach new audiences and will be repeated with English subtitles. Our arts and media correspondent Hugh Thomas reports.
Eto'n hyd, ein tair pa bryd.
Shakespeare's words in Welsh. Macbeth's witches meet in Caerphilly Castle for a production that breaks new ground with its language and its reach. Last night's performance was beamed live into cinemas, where it will be repeated over the coming weeks.
This is the first time that one of their productions has been broadcast, and it's going to be repeated in the cinemas over the next couple of weeks, sometimes with English subtitles. Now, the whole point is to let more people enjoy the show wherever they live in Wales without having to travel to catch one of the performances.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? They don't have to travel all the way to Caerphilly Castle. Obviously, there are limited numbers who can see this here live. So it gives them the opportunity to see it whether it's in Bangor or Aberystwyth or in Newport.
And centuries after its first performance, Macbeth remains a pertinent play.
Thematically, it's about power. And it's about the desire for power. And that's as relevant today as it was 300, 400, 500 years ago.
The technical challenge of staging a play in an ancient castle is matched only by the complexities of broadcasting it to audiences scattered across the country. While it's now accessible to people who can't make it to Caerphilly, it's also about reaching those who'd normally give Welsh language theatre a miss.
Because we've got the subtitles, then we're opening up our work to as wide an audience as we can. And that's very important to us, to bring people to Welsh language theatre, even though they may not be able to speak the language.
All the performances at the castle are sold out, but it will be repeated at cinemas with subtitles over the next 2 months.
Tonight's production of the weather forecast now, starring Derek Brockway.
Jamie, there's no storm and tempest on the way, but certainly much milder than recently. 12 degrees, 54 Fahrenheit in Cwm Ioe in Monmouthshire today, with sunshine and showers this afternoon. Abersoch in Gwynedd, bright and breezy with a brisk southwesterly wind. Now, I think we've seen the last of the cold weather for a while. Winter, of course, not over yet, but should feel more like spring at times over the next few days. This evening we start with some showery rain, but that will clear away eastwards. The rest of the night then looking dry, some clear spells, also some low cloud and mist forming. Not a cold night, but a little bit chilly inland, down to 4 Celsius, say in Llanfyllin, maybe a touch of ground frost with a low of 4 degrees. So here's the picture for 8 in the morning. Dry in the south, bright in places. We'll have some low cloud, maybe the odd fog patch in Monmouthshire. Also 1 or 2 showers dotted about in mid and north Wales, otherwise dry. A southwesterly breeze on Anglesey. So overall, a fairly decent day to come tomorrow. Largely dry, some sunshine at times. Just the odd isolated shower in the afternoon, and it will turn out mild temperatures above average, 10 to 12 Celsius. Light winds in the south, a tad breezy in the north. So in Denbighshire tomorrow, most of the day dry, some sunshine and mild, 11 in Rhuthun. In Neath Port Talbot, most places dry, sunny intervals, a high of 10 in Britain Ferry. And then tomorrow night, a little rain spreading into parts of the north. Elsewhere dry. In the south, there is a risk of a few fog patches. And then Friday's chart, that shows a ridge of high pressure over us. This cold front west of Ireland will pass through Wales over the weekend, but it will weaken, not bring in much rain. So on Friday, any mist and fog patches will lift. Some bright spells, some sunshine and mild again. Mostly dry, but in the south and west, increasing cloud may bring the odd spot of rain later in the afternoon. Then over the weekend, plenty of cloud on Saturday, a little bit of rain, mostly in the north and west. On Sunday, most places dry and mild again. Jamie.
Derek, thank you. The headlines again. Police in Malaysia have arrested a 28-year-old woman in connection with the suspected poisoning of the half-brother of North Korea's leader. Kim Jong-nam died yesterday after he was attacked at Kuala Lumpur airport. Tonight's other headlines: thousands of Tata steelworkers have backed a deal that'll end the company's final salary pension scheme. It includes a £1 billion investment commitment at Port Talbot and no compulsory job losses. I'll have an update for you here at 8 o'clock and again after the BBC News at 10. That's Wales Today. Thanks for watching. From all of us on the programme, good evening.